Welcome to The Recovering Perfectionist, where you'll learn all the hacks you need to get started and finished on your business or project. You'll connect with successful entrepreneurs who are in perfectionist rehab, unapologetically experimenting and balancing life, business, family, and me time. I'm your host and Chief Recovering Perfectionist, Claire Barton. Hey, Recovering Perfectionist, it's Claire Barton, and I'm joined today by the gorgeous Kim Foster-Carlson, all the way from the US. We've finally managed to find a spot that's not too late and not too early for each of us, so it's great to have a bit of a chat. So Kim is based in San Francisco. She's been a journalist for 30 years. She's a mum to 2 daughters, and she's just written a beautiful book about perfectionism. So, of course, we clicked and we wanted to have a bit of a chat. So welcome to the show, Kim. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Claire. I guess I should say hi. My name is Kim, and I'm a recovering perfectionist.
And then we say hi, I spoke at Seven Sisters Festival in early 2018, and I did the same thing. I was like, "Hi, my name's Claire. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Hi, Claire." And it's been 386 days since I did something perfectly. Big claps. Anyway, a little bit of a off on a little tangent. Anyway, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you.
A little bit about you, but I'd love to start off if you can tell us a bit about you and your journey and who you are, what you do as a person and in your professional life as well.
Well, I'm a 5-time swimmer from and an athlete who went on to the Olympic trials for swimming, and that was very, very, perfectionistic in that, you're trying to be perfect in a world that, is measured by 1/100th of a second or something like that. So my skills of a perfectionist were honed early. I was a firstborn. My parents were both firstborns. So it seemed like everything was on me, not on my siblings. They could get away with everything, but for me, it was, very high standards. And it's like, if I didn't make a mistake, then I felt accomplished. So I sort of pushed myself into swimming and then into the world of journalism. And journalism is where you can't make mistakes either. I had a professor that said, if you, write this article and you get everything correct, you get an A, but if I see one misspelling or something, you're going to get an F. So it's like, wow. There was no in between for me. So I sort of started that whole, it's either all success or all failure. And then I was doing sports on the radio, which was really unheard of in the early 80s for a woman to be doing sports. And my boss brought me in, he goes, you're a woman, you're going to be doing sports, and so everyone's going to listen to you closer than they would anybody else, so you cannot make any mistakes. And I was like, oh, okay, So I started beating myself up over little tiny mistakes that finally drew me to the therapist chair. The therapist said, you can't think of things as all good or all bad. You have to think of things as good enough. And I was like, good enough. This is ridiculous. It was, she said, just try it for a week. So I tried it for a week, and I felt like I had sort of a new lease on life. It's like, okay, I didn't, I got the dinner on the table. It wasn't that good, but I did it, So I think that, she really helped me sort of realize that things weren't all good or all bad. They were good enough. But then I saw in my daughters, who are also swimmers, accomplished athletes, the same kind of things. If they made one small mistake, they were getting really upset at themselves and not trying things, because sort of the sidetrack to perfectionism is procrastination. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I'm not going to start anything. So sort of wrote the book for them, and they liked it. Their millennial friends liked it, and then their parents liked it. So it's sort of taken off from that point. But it's called Good Enough: How to Overcome Fear of Failure and Perfectionism to Live Your Best Life.
I love it. I absolutely can't wait. We were just talking before we started recording about Australia Post and how unfortunately awful it is, and I haven't received it yet, but I'm so looking forward to reading it. I'm about a third of the way through writing my own book around the same sort of thing. So super excited to hear what you've got to say as well. And we've talked about on the show quite a bit, quite often before with various people, this a couple of things that kind of pop up into my head with what you've just said. And there's the first thing is that perfectionists and people who identify with that sort of thing really hold themselves to such a high standard. They don't really care what everyone else is doing around them, and it's almost like I hate using the word martyrdom kind of thing, but it's almost like I'll do it so that you don't have to. Like I'll do everything perfectly so that you can enjoy your lives. And you kind of do this thing, and often, as you said exactly, like perfection is there's pure perfection, and there's also fear. So you're either afraid of failing, afraid of looking stupid, afraid of getting it wrong, or being embarrassed, or whatever. So I think it's a really cool conversation. So I'd love to maybe just start by talking about that athleticism and that sort of thing. So you mentioned when perfectionism is measured by 1/100th of a second, and that must be horrendously stressful at times. You want something so bad and you're striving for it, but you can miss out by such a tiny little wee margin.
Yes.
How did that kind of come from you, or was that an expectation from your family, or how do you think that kind of bubbled up to become such a big issue for you?
I think it's inherent in the sport of swimming or anything where you're racing a clock as well, and then I saw that in my daughters. But I have a story in the book about my daughter being just good and thinking and of the attitude of being good enough, and she won a bronze medal at the World Championships in 2009 in Rome. She barely qualified. They take two. She was the second qualifier, and they went to Rome, and she barely made the final. She was eighth, and they only three get medals. It's just like the Olympics. It's like the poor fourth place person, is out, and she ended up out of the far right lane. Actually, I think she beat somebody from Australia, but
we won't take it personally. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Phew. And got third place.
Wow.
And so she calls me up. She's like, I've never been so happy to get third place. And I go, well, you were just good enough. She goes, I know, that's all I wanted to be,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's like, so I think there's a lot for learning, of just enjoying life, enjoying the process. And I also talk in the book, with basketball is very big here in the Bay Area. The NBA team, Golden State Warriors, they've won 2 championships in the last 3 years, and they have a player on the team called Steph Curry, and he plays with joy. He plays, he shoots from half court and he makes it. His college coach said that he was not afraid to fail, that he was going to keep shooting. He'd miss 5 in a row, and then he'd all of a sudden he'd be able to make 5 because he never lost confidence. And he's very small, 6'2" for the NBA. He looks like a regular guy. Nobody really thinks this tiny little kid is going to do these amazing things. And they just started up again. They started practice today, and he's like, our whole season is going to be about fun and playing with joy and staying in the moment. And that's exactly how you get out of that perfectionistic tizzy, I call it, that you get into. Is the gratitude, playing with joy, or living in the moment, and not worrying about failing, and even trying to fail, because if you win, you learn. If you fail, you learn, and you get more information sometimes by failing than you do from winning.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's one of the hardest lessons to learn is to get okay with failing and enjoy it. And I know my coach, and who's a very good friend of mine as well, I remember years ago, and she said, I think she was doing some sort of program as well, and she was given a project and then handed the project to the rest of us and her family and her partner and that sort of thing, to go out and try and do something that you'll fail at. So go and find something to fail at. And the exercise was like, go into Starbucks, order a coffee and ask for a discount, because they're going to say no, because you don't get discounts at Starbucks just because you asked for one, right? And it's really hard to be told no. It's really hard to ask for something that you're going to get rejected on. But actually, it doesn't matter. And when you can kind of start practicing that, it just opens up so many different opportunities, doesn't it? Because you're like, oh, someone said no to me and the whole world didn't fall apart. I failed at something, and the world kept turning, and everything was fine. And once you do it enough times, it just becomes just part of the process. You don't even think about it. You're like, oh, I'll just give it a go, and if it doesn't work, like I totally agree with you. I think failing is more important than succeeding, because it shows you like what to work on or what to drop, like so many times. And I'm famous for it, and I see it in my kid, in my son especially, that I famously have said to anyone who'll listen, pretty much, if I don't get good at something really quickly, I'll drop it. I'll try anything, but if I'm not good at it pretty quickly, I lose interest. I have a very short concentration span, right? I try not to say that in front of my kids because I don't want them to have that same sort of thing, but I already see it in my son especially. Like he is a bit of a perfectionist, and he is very sensitive, and he does want to impress people, and he does want to get things right, and he beats himself up. He's 5, right? Like he's little. So trying to be a role model so that he's not seeing me beat myself up if I get something wrong. And that has been a really big catalyst for me as well. Like just going, I don't want them to have these sorts of ridiculous hang-ups. I don't want these, like my little people, to be stressed out if they make a mistake or that sort of thing. So it's been a really big learning curve to just go, oh, let's just do something silly and see what happens.
No, yeah, that's why I wrote the book, because I saw that and in them. And it's funny because my daughter goes, well, I read the chapter about me.
Yeah.
Such a millennial thing to do. But I also researched, and there's a school back east, it's called Smith College, and every incoming freshman has to take this class on failure, and they have to fail at something, because they had students coming in, and this is a Ivy League school, very high achieving school, and kids had never gotten an A- on a report card. Wow. And all of a sudden they got a B in a class, and they were quitting. I quit, I'm out. Wow. I'm done. Yeah, right. Yeah. So this class has really helped a lot of these freshmen, and you have to, same like you said, go out and find something to fail at, and get the information that you need, and then fail again, and you have to fail all the way through the semester. And the school administrators say it's changed the lives of so many students, and they don't have students coming in so distressed about not being perfect. Yeah.
And look, I've see every other video I feel like I watch on Facebook and that sort of thing is something around resilience. And, there's so much stress with all the technology and all the competing priorities that we have in our lives. And I mean, you and I are, like, I feel like it's changed since I've actually found some mixed tapes from when I was a teenager, right? And my kids were like, what are they? So, back then I had some CDs that my best friend burned in high school half my lifetime ago, playing in the car the other day. And I was like, it was so simple, but we used to spend Saturday afternoons making mixed discs. That's what we kind of did. And we might be on the phone a couple of times a week, but pretty much we'd watch telly or we'd read a book or whatever. But now, even in that short space of time, there's so many competing priorities. You're always on your phone. You're always contactable. There's so many people who want something from you. And especially like, you've got your own business, we've got our own businesses, that it's so hard to switch off, especially when you're working from home or you're working from yourself. You don't get to go to the office and clock on at 9 and clock off at 5. You're always around, and you're always like, your business is kind of who you are as well. And you're just so on. So there's so much pressure to be everything to everyone. And I can't even imagine what it's going to be like for my kids when they're my age, right? In another 30 years or so. And so, yeah, anything that sort of takes it away. And we've had a lot of conversations on here about young people who've had things like eating disorders or depression or anxiety, and how perfectionism kind of plays into that, and these ridiculous expectations that we have for ourselves and for our kids and for, people in our community and that sort of thing. So I think, anything that builds resilience and gets us just not taking everything so friggin' seriously all the time, right? And playing. Like, have a play with it, experiment, try it out. If it doesn't work, that's great. Often I'll say, if you get a hater or someone disagrees with you, brilliant. That is awesome, because you either have the opportunity to have the courage of your convictions and back yourself up and be like, yeah, I still really believe this, even though someone hates me for it. I still really believe in this. Tick. Or you go, wow, they've got a really good point. Maybe I should reassess. That's really great as well, because then you can, filter things and make sure that you are actually on track. It's totally necessary, but it's really freaking hard to learn to start with.
It is. But I also talk about how you always think people are, look, my kids were like, oh, I can't do that, I'm being embarrassed, or they're watching me. And it's like, in reality, people are sort of self-absorbed. They're into their own world. They're not even watching you, or they don't care. They're out doing something else. So you sort of have, if you can get that spotlight sort of away from yourself and know that people really aren't watching you that closely.
Totally.
That you can do more things without worrying about what people think. And people are, like I said, they're very self-centered. They're thinking about themselves more than they're thinking about you.
Absolutely.
So, but I really talk about gratitude, and that has helped me, I think, the most is writing down 3 things you're grateful for in the morning, and one person to thank during the day, either by email or call or whatever. As it gets you out of that sort of self-absorbed, egocentric thing. You're thinking, okay, I'm grateful, and it can be just simple things like I'm grateful for my cup of coffee this morning, or I'm grateful that my children are healthy, or something like that. But I feel like that has made a big difference.
Yeah, it's definitely in my world a bit more these days as well. I've got my gratitude journal, which I'm a little bit lax with, I must admit. But I was in the habit at the beginning of the year of doing that, like 3 every morning. Write down 3 things you're grateful for, and I kind of, sometimes I remember it and sometimes I don't. I feel like I'm a pretty positive person, so it's kind of a natural thing. But I'm really starting to try and get my kids involved in it as well. Like I said, my son's 5, my daughter just turned 4, and usually on the way to school we talk about. Like sometimes we use the word lucky, or sometimes we'll say I'm thankful for, or sometimes blah, blah. And they now do it, and they're like, well, what are you thankful for? And they ask each other, and it's can be things like, I had orange juice today, or I've got a new dress up, or whatever. But then they're starting to think about things outside themselves, and I'm just like, oh, thank goodness we've I hope that this is setting them up so that they, take that through their lives as well. But wish that
that is. I think it does. I think you have to start early, and this generation is all about the internet, and how Instagram and Facebook and how you look and how you act. So I think they're even going to have a harder time of it because of that. But their lives are in the spotlight, so to speak, but that it's not all about how you look. It's about how you treat people, how you are grateful, how you stay in the moment, and you play with joy. I was in the middle part of the country of the United States talking about my book, and they said that they remember athletes that played with joy, and that even if you have your own business, you see people that are just so happy in their business that sort of rubs off on you. That's like, oh, okay, if these people aren't grumpy, they're not unhappy, they're not stressed out, they're enjoying their life, and they're really happy to have you be there for their business, then I think that makes a huge difference in terms of success in a business.
And that's a tricky one as well, isn't it? That sort of the difference between being a little bit jealous or thinking like, why don't I have that, or that comparisonitis thing, versus, wow, look at them, they're amazing, if they can do it, I can too. And that can be a bit of a tricky hurdle as well. But I think that's kind of the plight of the perfectionist as well, because we kind of are in that egocentric, like, oh, it's all about me and I've got to do it all by myself, and if they can do it but I can't, why aren't I there yet, that sort of thing. That's kind of a tricky transition to make as well, isn't it?
Oh yes, definitely. I feel that the comparison thing is really hard, because especially if you're in sports, it's, you're competitive, and in your business, you're competing with, other businesses. But I really found that there's enough for everybody. There's enough money, there's enough businesses, there's enough the internet to go around. And if you can be joyful and happy seeing people succeed, that will help you succeed. And I think if you're in that sort of, they call it the reptilian brain, where you're just like, oh, I guess, sort of on a lower level and just like mad at the world because why do they have this and I don't have this, then you attract more of that into you.
Totally.
But if you are able to say, oh, congratulations for your success, I hope to be like you someday, then there's more than enough to go around. I think you pull that comes out of you, and then you attract that as well. It's sort of that law of attraction kind of thing. Yeah.
Totally. Beautiful. So I'd really like to go back to the joy thing, because I think that is something that is really interesting, like playing with joy, whether that's in sports or in business or in your life. So how did you, when you kind of realize that needed to be part of your recovery from perfectionism, how did you get more joy into your life, and how did you flick from competition to joy and still maintain that sort of drive to succeed?
Right. Yeah. Well, in radio, I'm on the air sometimes for 5 hours at a time
Wow.
reading the news, and I'm running all the commercials and the microphones and everything too. There's going to be mistakes. They're going to be, it's like you're going to try, but you're going to push the wrong button sometimes or things like that. And I used to just beat myself up. I'd cry all the way home, my
Wow.
little commute home from San Francisco. I'd just be like, why did I do that wrong? And then I'd tell my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, did you hear that I had like, no, they call it dead air. I had dead air. You couldn't hear anything because I messed up. And he goes, I didn't even notice it. And I'm like, okay, I'm over focusing on my mistakes. And I had a news director, a boss who I just loved. And he was like, Kim, people love those. They love the humanism. They love the mistakes. They love the being yourself. Just be yourself, and people will respond to that. I was a news talk station that was sort of personality based, and once I sort of got that freedom, they were like, "God, you sound terrific. You sound fantastic." And I was like, "Okay, why didn't I sounded the same last week?" But I had let myself off the hook with, there's going to be mistakes, but I'm going to, and we used to laugh about them, like, oh, the gremlins are out. They messed up the commercial. But I mean, I think if you live your life like I'm not going to make a mistake, you're not really going to try many new things either.
Yeah, that's true. You can't stretch really, can you?
Yeah. So it's allowed me to try so many different things, and writing a book and going out on the road and talking about the book, and so many other things where I would be, before I'd be like, oh no, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. And I think that takes you out of the moment, takes you out of the joy. And if you can come back into that, I always talk to my girls about this. Well, why did you get into swimming? Don't you remember when you were 6 and you got to eat candy and play with your friends? I mean, this is the same thing, except you're on the national stage, And they're like, yeah, you're right, Mom. So I think you have to almost go back to your kid-like behaviors of why you got into this in the first place,
Yeah, so true. And connecting with that purpose. And I think something that really helped me and continues to help me when I start beating myself up about something is to think about how much more I can connect and how much more I appreciate other people when they make mistakes and they can say, like, heart on my sleeve, I've stuffed up, I'm really sorry about this. I'm like, oh, thank God they're not perfect as well. It's not just me who makes mistakes. And when I started this podcast and I started a Facebook group, actually I had a Facebook group already and I changed it to be called The Recovering Perfectionists. It was like, I just felt like everyone was sitting around a Christmas table and we all just let our belts out and we're like, oh, thank goodness. I don't have to sit here pretending like I'm something that I'm not anymore. It was just this, you could feel this kind of sigh of relief, and people just came out of the woodwork going, me too. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I don't do this and I don't know what I'm doing and I need help with this. Where in a lot of other places, they felt like they had to kind of, be up here and like it, I was explained like you sort of holding your breath. You're kind of just like walking around like waiting for someone to realize that you're not actually as perfect as you thought you were. And when you can do that for yourself, it automatically holds space for other people to come in and do it. And you're never alone then, because everyone is waiting for someone to take that first step.
Right.
And once you've done that, you're like, oh, I'm not the only person who's like that. And, we kind of do all live in these ridiculous silos from time to time. And it's so unnecessary. It's actually really nice when you can kind of just chill out and you can connect with people and go, oh, you're not just a robot who's amazing and on the other side. And, we've all got our own shit going on. Everyone's got something going on, So yeah, it's really
I have a son as well, and he has autism, and that was part of the whole thing that threw me into this perfectionistic tizzy, so to speak. Is like, oh my gosh, I've got to cure him. There's all this stuff on the internet. I've got to do 80,000 things, and I just was consumed by it. And, he goes out in public. Sometimes he's great. Sometimes he's not great, so it's sort of getting over the fact that, he is a little different. He's high functioning now and he lives on his own and he's doing great. But that those early years were tough when parents were, parents were doing fun things with their kids. And I was, in speech therapy with him and doing all these other things that, I was always like, why me? And now I
Mm.
understand, has so many gifts to bring to
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
But you do wonder, you do wonder more what people think of him, or if they think it's your parenting, or that kind of thing. But he's been a joy. Um, and now he's doing just tremendously well, but it's like some people don't understand autism, so they say things that aren't appropriate to you, and you're just, to me, I just think, okay, they're just uninformed.
Yeah.
I don't get mad at them, and I try to inform them, oh no, he has a regular intelligence, it's just his speaking is behind, this and that,
Yeah.
so I think it's been a great opportunity to bring more awareness to it, and everyone that knows them loves them, and so I think he is a great ambassador for what kids can grow up to be as adults, and has helped me sort of overcome that perfectionism as well. Like he lives in his own world and lives in our world, and he's tremendous.
Yeah. And was becoming a mum kind of part of your catalyst to helping yourself get over the perfectionist things?
Oh yeah, that was, I think, what brought me to the therapist chair was was all of it. The swimming, my older daughter's competing in athletics, and then my son, having such a difficult time early on. Something had to give. I was about ready to crack. So I think when the therapist said, you can't think of things as all good or all bad, you have to think of things as good enough, and that took me a while, and I still struggle with that sometimes.
Sure.
I don't think, and that doesn't mean that you can sit on the couch and do nothing all day. Oh, I'm good enough, whatever, It doesn't give you, it doesn't give you the okayness to be a slob or something like that. But it sort of gets you out of the 110. I have to be 110% because you actually work better at 90%. You can go a lot further at 90%.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I heard when I was starting to, and my main catalyst, I think, was becoming a parent, and I just realized, like, I can't do it all anymore. And there's no hiding when you've got a newborn who is awake 21 hours a day. Like, you can't. There's nothing
exactly.
you can do about it. Someone said, your 80% is someone else's 150% anyway, right? Like, in certain areas, and when you're working in your zone of genius, and when you're doing something that you love and you're passionate about, you don't have to do 150% because you're already, like, you can do, like, somewhere below 100% capacity or input from you is still going to be amazing and so helpful to other people as well. So you don't have to, have all the bells and whistles and that sort of thing. I think that's a really helpful thing to realize. Like, you don't have to be perfect. And I've had this conversation with people sometimes because they're like, there's no problem with being perfectionist. I like doing things perfectly. I'm like, no, I'm not saying you get to do a shit job. You don't get to be a slob and sit around and just let people do everything for you.
Right.
You don't have to agonize over delivering or doing or looking or seeming completely perfect and like you've got you've got everything together all the time.
Oh yes, yeah. It's like when people come over, we shove things in the closet, and we're okay with that, And but perfectionists, they can't do that. They've got to rearrange the closet before they do that. So I think I did talk about 90% in the book about going at 90%. You can go a lot longer. If you go 110%, you're going to burn out really quickly.
Totally, yeah.
And that helped me a lot. Like, okay, I've done 5 things today. I'm gonna with my business. I'm just gonna put that behind me. I'm not going to try to do 5 more before everybody gets home,
Yeah. I'm actually going to enjoy the fact that I work for myself and I can sit down and watch Netflix for the next half an hour.
Yes, exactly.
I get it. Love it. Well, we could sit here and talk about this all day because we're obviously completely on the same page, and I really love having this chat. I would love to know, for anyone who's listening, how can we follow you? How do we get in touch? How do we get our hands on your beautiful book?
Here it is right here.
There it is.
You can go to it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy your books online. Good Enough: How to Overcome Fear of Failure and Perfectionism to Live Your Best Life, under my name, Kim Foster-Carlson. I also have a webpage, kimfostercarlson.com. And then we have a Good Enough Facebook group, which is similar probably to your Facebook group, where we talk about different things, and we have guests, bloggers, and a lot of people resonate with this issue of perfectionism and fear of failure. So it's been a nice journey so far, and I learn something every time I talk to you or anybody about how to just the tips to how to live your best life, and not be so bogged down about being perfect.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely, I completely agree. Virtual high five.
All right. I think you're.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I think you're my sister from another mother. We talk the same language.
Exactly. You have a much nicer accent than I do. Yes, we're talking the same language. Awesome. So all of the links will be in show notes, and you'll see us on social media and all that sort of thing. But I really appreciate you coming on, Kim. Thanks so much for getting in touch, and I can't wait to read the book. And I'm sure we'll talk again very, very soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Claire.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. And that is absolutely it, my lovely. So I hope you've really enjoyed the episode. It was great fun recording that one, as it is with all of them. If you'd like to connect, I'd love to stay in touch with you. I have a beautiful Facebook group community at bit.ly/The Recovering Perfectionist Crew, with all capital T, R, P and C. I have a massive goal this year to get 50,000 downloads on my podcast, and I've got a YouTube show as well. So I'd love for you to help me out if you can by either subscribing to the podcast on iTunes. So if you want to go over and do that now, that would be awesome. If you have a couple of favourite episodes, or if there's one favourite episode that you've really enjoyed, I would love you to share that with anyone who you think would get as much out of it as you have as well. And while you're in iTunes, if you can jump in and give it a review, that would be amazing. iTunes definitely helps out podcasts that have got some good ratings and reviews and some really interactive listeners. So I would really appreciate your help with getting to my goal of 50,000 in 2017. The show is also available over on YouTube. The links are always in the show notes, so you can head over there. So it's The Recovering Perfectionist on YouTube. There's a channel for that as well. So jump in and leave your comments. You can watch all of the episodes in video. So if you want to see what we look like and our crazy hand gestures and facial expressions and all of that sort of thing, absolutely jump in. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel show as well, and then you'll be kept up to date when there's some new episodes that come in there. So love your support. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's hello@clairebarton.com.au. Always happy to receive your emails and open up a conversation. All right, big love. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.